to
Well, I think there's something on one of the scrutiny committees about Lowther. So I suppose, Chairman, I should declare an interest in that. Is there not a Lowther item somewhere?
Community focus.
Or
yes,
have
community focus.
So I suppose, that, strictly speaking, I should declare an interest
Thank you.
as a trustee.
And confirmation of the minutes of the meetings of the 26th of June and 2nd of July. Are we happy with those? We all in favour? Thank you. I will sign those. We'll sign one of them. Councillor Fazackley will sign the other. And can I ask item 3, are there any urgent items?
No, Chairman.
Thank you. And item 4 is the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee. And Councillor Fabian Wilson, good evening.
Good evening. This one is really quite quick. If you blink, you'll miss it. The two items that were looked at the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee meeting of the 11th of July. One was the policy on discharging the homelessness duty into the private sector, and we had seen part of what sort of on this report before, and this was brought to us to approve this draft policy for it to go to consultation, and the committee did recommend that it be approved to go to the consultation. The other issue we looked at was the corporate plan for 2013 through 2016. And we recommend that it be approved by the full council and that the corporate plan be reviewed on an annual basis with the key short-term actions updated through the service planning process. And that was it. We also looked at the year-end performance report and the medium-term financial strategy, but they were both just noted because they had been to Cabinet prior to coming to our committee.
Any observations? Colleagues? Councillor Buckley?
Thank you, Chairman. I think there was some discussion on the homelessness strategy, if I remember. Was there some concern about discharging the homelessness duty to the private sector and the length of tenancies being
Excuse
12?
me?
Was there some concern about discharging the duty into the private sector and the length of tenancies, if I recall? I just wonder if that was something you remember. Was there a discussion about the length of a tenancy having to be 12 months rather than 6?
I don't recall that we had much of a discussion about the tenancy at the time, because we had discussed this issue at a prior meeting, and this was coming back to us. The draft policy was then coming back to us for us to recommend it for consultation. So all of those issues had been discussed at the prior.
Okay. I think something to watch out for when it comes back from consultation, Chairman, is
on the tenancy issue.
On the length of the tenancy issue. It was there were some members, I recall, who felt it wasn't going to be attractive to the private sector landlords because of the length
of the tenancies.
So this is something to watch out for, I think, when it comes back. Yeah.
But that was the thing that was discussed in that prior one, rather than in the one that we just had.
Okay. Thank you.
I think, in fairness, the minutes of the 11th of July on the item 4. and the final paragraph of that does state, it was pointed out by members that the minimum 12-month tenancy agreement required by the legislation may well be a disincentive to some private landlords. So we need to be on top of that. Thank you very much indeed. Any more observations? Okay.
I'm very happy to propose this item.
Proposed by Councillor Little.
I'll second it.
And seconded by Councillor Buckley. Are we all in favour? Thank you. And thank you, Councillor. Community Focus Scrutiny Committee. And Councillor Aykroyd. How is Councillor Mulholland, by the way?
Progressing.
Thank you.
He started chasing the women again. So
Okay. Thank you. Definite improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. The committee had 4 items on the agenda: the planning improvement plan, the reports from the Fylde Citizens Advice Bureau and the Lowther Garden Trust, and also the proposed Arts Service Review. The committee does ask you to consider endorsing the recommendations for the planning improvement plan, and also noting the comments that we made on the reports from the Fylde Citizens Advice Bureau, Lowther Gardens Trust, and we appointed a task and finish group to undertake the proposed service art review with a view to reporting back to committee at the appropriate intervals.
Thank you. Any observations with regards to
no,
the report?
Chairman, it's simply to note and to endorse the recommendations of that Scrutiny Committee's report.
Thank you.
Straightforward.
Thank you.
So proposed by Councillor Fylde,
And seconded by me, Chairman.
seconded by Councillor Fazakerlou. You all in favour of those? Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Aykroyd. Item 6 is the Revenue and Benefits Service.
Yes, Chairman, if I could just take you through this. This deals with the future of the Council's Revenues and Benefits Service. This particular service has been under a shared administrative agreement with Blackpool Council for the last 5 years, and this particular agreement comes to its close at the end of September. This report details the history of why the arrangements were entered into in 2008. On page 21, it gives what the service actually manages on our behalf. This report actually was considered by the Policy Scrutiny Committee at its meeting on the 5th of September, and they considered this and commend to you that we continue with the agreement. There are other options that would be available to the executive to consider, such as looking at an alternative service provider, bringing the service back in-house, as examples. However, we have a strong partnership with Blackpool Council, who have delivered this service for us with no issues arising, and there is a very fast pace of change with respect to the welfare reform agenda, which is why it would also be felt ill-advisable to make any change at this particular point. In particular, Housing Benefit Administration is due to be transferred to the DWP as part of its universal credit rollout at some point in the future. Originally, we did think that those plans would take effect in the next financial year. We've now been advised that that's likely to be from some point from 2015 onwards, but obviously that is a major change impacting on the service. In terms of the recommendation that's set out before you on page 20, that is to continue with the arrangement with Blackpool Council, which is termed as a shared administrative arrangement, and the recommendation would also be strengthened to reflect the discussions that took place at scrutiny, that the agreement in this particular instance would not be for a further 5 years, but would be for 3 years with an option to renew for a further 12. And I think if the recommendation could reflect that, that would be useful. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. This is a major service, and a service that also carries some big figures, and so it is good that it comes to cabinet with all the details with regards to how that is how it is administered. Are there any observations, Councillor Buckley?
Thank you, Chairman. This is, Ms Morrison said, it's gone before scrutiny, which is right that it did so, and it does seem very sensible to continue with the present arrangements. I know, as has been said, there's been an awful lot of changes been delivered lately, and especially what springs to mind to me is the new council tax discount scheme, which was undertaken through Blackpool, and the consultation exercise, and the advice that we got throughout that was excellent, and I think is worthy of note. And of course there's more changes coming, so it does seem really sensible to stay with Blackpool, and for regular reports to come to scrutiny as they have been doing. I know scrutiny do look at the performance, and that's something that we're keen on. The turnaround time for new claimants or changes of circumstances is something that we need to really keep on top of, and I'm sure that scrutiny will continue to do that. I think the recommendation then needs tightening up from what Ms Morrison said. The recommendation needs to state that it is recommended that the contract be extended for 3 years with a further year's option, and it doesn't quite state that, so if we can tighten that up. And yes, I'd like to propose it.
Thank you. And I echo the comments that Councillor Buckley has made. As I say, it is extremely important service jointly with Blackpool, and I welcome its regular visits to scrutiny. And if the 3-year extension period can be added to the recommendation, I'm pleased to second Councillor Buckley's proposal. Are we all in favour? Thank you. Boxes to bins. Evaluation and outcomes. Thank you, Stanley.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. This report revisits the background and drivers for change from the boxes to bins and provides a breakdown of the processes, planning and member decisions that fed into the project, and then evaluates the outcomes and achievements of the past 18 months. Members are asked to note the contents of the report and to provide officers with feedback on the outcomes. The original box and bag recycling scheme introduced in Fylde in 2004 was well received across the borough, with good participation and high levels of recycling. However, there were several challenges. Despite support for recycling in general, a large number of residents did complain about the containers that were received. Boxes were too small to contain all of the materials, resulting in numerous requests for replacement containers and multiple containers, with many households presenting as many as 4 boxes and assorted containers on recycling day, with an annual replacement rate of in excess of £10,000. There was widespread dissatisfaction with the white sack that was introduced for paper and cardboard, and participation in this part of the scheme was very, very poor, with the majority of paper and cardboard ending up in the residual bin. The multitude of different containers being presented on recycling day, with the green waste bin, the box, the bags, and other assorted containers containing the leftover recyclables, contributed to an untidy appearance, obstruction of the highway, and windblown materials, resulting in spillages and dissatisfaction with street cleanliness levels. This was recorded as low as 66% in 2011-12. The curbside vehicles that were being used were coming to the end of their useful life, and advances in new technology, with recent developments in vehicle design, offering rear-loading vehicles with greater capacity and fewer health and safety risks, provided good alternatives to consider, in addition to reduced manpower, which would offer operational efficiencies. In addition to this, the new waste treatment technology plants introduced from LCC provided the opportunity to co-mingle the recyclate, collecting it together in one bin rather than source separating at the curbside. Again, this was efficiencies, and reduced any benefits that the side-loading curbside vehicle had. Research into recycling behaviours indicates that residents are happy to recycle, but once the container provided is full, they then tend to just use the general bin for the majority of the materials. So providing a larger container would encourage more recycling. In November 2010, the Council was successful in securing a grant for funding from Lancashire County Council to introduce a pilot scheme in Staining, which involved the collection of commingled glass cans and plastic bottles in a wheeled bin. The 6-month scheme took place, where pre- and post-scheme assessments were carried out to determine how the scheme had improved recycling in the area. These included customer satisfaction levels with recycling and cleanliness, recognition of the different kinds of materials that people could recycle, tonnages collected and the percentage recycled against the overall reduction in the amount of grey bin waste being collected, together with a measure of presentation and participation in the scheme. Feedback was also sought from the collection staff about the benefits of the modern collection techniques, and the results from this scheme were extremely encouraging and demonstrated marked improvement in all of the performance areas assessed. The challenges and key drivers, together with the need to demonstrate ongoing service improvements and operational efficiencies, increased satisfaction and financial savings, prompted the Waste Services team to carry out a full and dedicated analysis of the operational costs and procurement implications associated with modernising the scheme. The findings from the investigation were presented to both Scrutiny and Cabinet in July 2011 with the following objectives: to improve and future-proof the collection arrangements for recyclables, to introduce collection arrangements that are appropriate to the disposal requirements and offer long-term stability, to increase the level of customer satisfaction with the service, to increase the level of recycling across the borough, to improve operational efficiencies, and to achieve these improvements within existing budgets. Following an extensive public consultation exercise, the findings and options were again presented to Cabinet in November. Cabinet subsequently recommended to Council the provision of 2 180-litre wheeled bins to be used as the standard service provision, one for the collection of glass cans and plastic bottles, and the other for the collection of paper and cardboard. The scheme was then rolled out the following summer. Work then began on procurement of vehicles and containers, together with the development of a high-profile communication campaign, which included the production of posters, information leaflets, a comprehensive recycling wheel, easy-to-read text and simple images to capture the widest audience possible and improve participation in the scheme. The literature was developed in conjunction with a focus group of stakeholders, staff and collection crews. The information was also publicised on the side of the vehicles. These images were updated at the end of last year to highlight the full range of materials recyclable and keep the message fresh, and work is already underway to produce new vehicle panels, publicising the first year's successes and thanking residents for their support and commitment in improving Fylde's recycling performance. Press releases were sent to the local press at every stage of the process. Information, schedules and FAQs were published on the intranet and internet, together with regular updates in Fylde matters. Members were provided with updates to borough and parish councillors through regular emails and learning hours, and individual ward councillors were informed of rollouts in their own areas. Roadshows were held across the borough at prominent locations, and officers attended packed meetings to provide information on the scheme and address any queries or concerns. An arrangement of contamination stickers, yes, no stickers, thank you stickers have also subsequently been developed to provide additional information to residents. and the Bartec in-cab technology has been effectively utilised by collection crews to record any addresses where residents are experiencing difficulties so that additional support can be provided to them. Following feedback from the crews after the initial rollout about a number of relatively empty containers that were being presented each collection, a half-full sticker was then produced, thanking residents for their participation, but informing them that it was only necessary to present the bins when there wasn't sufficient capacity to wait for the next collection. Consequently, some residents choose to present the blue bin on one recycling collection and the brown bin the following collection, which has also contributed to operational efficiencies and fuel savings, since the wagon does not need to compact as frequently. The container exchange program was rolled out to approximately 90% of the properties in 3 phases between May and October of last year. Following this, additional rescoping of formerly exempt properties that were not originally suitable for the bins led to a further rollout in early 2013 to an additional 3% of properties, to give a total coverage of 93%. This rescoping exercise involved a visual inspection of every exempt property by officers, together with door knocking and communication with individual residents in an effort to extend the scheme to as many properties as possible. Many of the additional properties, including multiple occupied buildings, caravan parks, and single occupied dwellings with limited storage, where residents were able to share sets of bins between several properties. Numerous requests for recycling containers were actually received from residents in the exempt areas, and we continue to work with them to agree on presentation points and different collection techniques to try and maximise the coverage and to overcome any obstacles that there may be to participation. Despite the best efforts to extend the scheme as much as possible, there is still 7% of the borough which remains unsuitable for wheel bins due to no storage access issues. The majority of these properties are flats above shops or terraced houses with limited outdoor storage. They currently remain on the box and bag scheme. However, this scheme is serviced by a different vehicle which is not scheduled for replacement, so it is unknown at this stage whether this would be sustainable long term, and we will need to look at alternative collection methods for these properties. In addition, officers had inquiries from residents who did not want the bins under any circumstances, regardless of the size of their property. In these cases, residents completed a disclaimer form rejecting the bins, and any future requests for bins at these properties will result in charges. These properties could not remain on the box and bag scheme due to operational reasons, as it would mean sending 2 vehicles into the area. Therefore, the residents were advised that they would need to attend the Household Waste Recycling Centre to recycle their waste, and no additional waste would be accepted alongside the grey bin. Fortunately, only 170 properties have been recorded as refusals, which represents just 0.3% of the borough. As part of the original proposal, funding was originally requested for 360-litre wheeled bins to be provided primarily to multiple occupied buildings as phase 4 of the project towards the end of 2012. During the course of the rollout and rescoping, it became evident that many of these properties could and were willing to share and accommodate multiple sets of the 180-litre recycling bins. It therefore became apparent that it would not be necessary to purchase these larger, more expensive containers, consequently saving $298,000 approved in the 2012-13 capital programme. This was detailed in the outturn report presented to Cabinet in June. In order to establish the baseline position and measure the success and impact on the scheme, it was necessary to carry out extensive pre- and post-scheme monitoring across different demographic areas of the borough in order to capture a full range of opinions and recycling behaviours that were representative of the population as a whole. Participation rates and tonnages of recycling and residual materials captured were recorded on each of the recycling rounds for a period of 6 weeks prior to rollout of the bins in each phase. Customer satisfaction door knocking surveys were also conducted across each round, with a question designed to establish satisfaction with the existing scheme, satisfaction with cleanliness following collection, and an understanding of the range of materials that residents could currently recycle. In tandem with this, recognition surveys were also carried out, which involved a visual inspection of the contents of the box and the bag on collection day to determine the range of materials that people were recycling and to highlight any contamination issues where residents were presenting the wrong types of materials, which would result in rejection of loads from the recycling sites. This information was then used to assist in developing the scheme literature that accompanied the bins on rollout by highlighting those items that were less commonly recycled and providing a list of no items that could not be recycled. It was interesting to note that the verbal information gathered during the door knocking surveys often conflicted with the physical evidence obtained on visual inspection, and many residents suggested that they were recycling a greater range of materials than was actually the case. It was necessary to re-evaluate these same performance indicators at the end of the project to establish trends and improvements in the borough brought about by the modernised collection scheme. This work was completed in July of this year and represents 18 months of data collection and evaluation by Fylde waste officers. The pre-participation rates for the box and bag scheme were already high, in excess of 83%. The initial presentation of the wheeled bins following rollout indicated an increase in participation, but this may have been down to the fact that residents thought they were obliged to present the bins on each collection. Following the issuing of the thank you stickers, we did realise a slight decrease in presentation, with some residents choosing to present their bins on alternate cycles. However, presentation does remain very high at 81%, indicating that the majority of households are generating sufficient materials to present the bins on each recycling cycle. Replacing the green box and the blue bin has resulted in an increase in container satisfaction rate from 63% to 91%. Providing the brown bin for paper and card as an alternative for the white sack has resulted in an improvement from 44% to 91% in satisfaction. Overall satisfaction with the bag and bin service was recorded at 87% at the start of the campaign. This has increased to 89% with the bins 12 months on, and has been recorded as high as 93% satisfaction in some areas of the borough. Improvements have also been recorded in satisfaction with street cleanliness after collection, which has improved from 53% pre-scheme to 80% 12 months on. The tonnage of materials collected by the recycling crews has increased by almost 600 tonnes in 12 months, equating to an increase of 2.5% and a recycling rate of 46%. It's anticipated that this increase should be even more noticeable in 2013, since the annual tonnage collected will represent a full year on bins for the whole borough, rather than just the individual phases as they were rolled out. As expected, there has been a corresponding fall in the tonnage of grey bin waste collected. This has then fallen by more than 600 tonnes, confirming the presence of recyclable materials in the waste stream in previous years. The visual capture rate inspections of the wheeled bins demonstrates a greater range of materials being recycled from around the home, so not just kitchen products as previously seen. This is particularly evident in the brown bins for paper and cardboard, which are now frequently used by residents, as opposed to the poor participation previously recorded in the inferior white sack scheme. Another key success of the exchange has been the reduction in the number of requests for replacement containers, which has fallen by over 50% in the last year. Not only does this demonstrate operational efficiencies for the waste services, but it also reduces the number of waste-related calls and complaints received by the contact centre, reflecting higher satisfaction levels. A battery collection scheme was introduced alongside the wheeled bins, which has been well received by residents, providing a convenient way to recycle these hazardous items. And to date, approximately 60,000 household batteries have been collected by the curbside. The satisfaction survey provided the opportunity to publicise the Council's bulky waste collection service, which was previously poorly supported. Of those questioned during the initial survey, only 40% of residents indicated a knowledge of the scheme, which has now increased to 71% following raising the awareness. We're going to introduce bulky waste collection panels on the side of the wagons as well to try and continually increase knowledge of that scheme. Residents were also questioned on the quality of the communication, information and literature provided advertising the recycling service. 87% of residents surveyed rated the general information provided on recycling as very good or excellent. In addition to the in-house monitoring and evaluation carried out by Fylde officers, Fylde also participated in a household waste recycling satisfaction survey conducted by Ipsos Mori in December of last year, 6 months after the rollout. 4,000 surveys were delivered to residents in the Phase 2 distribution area, with a return rate of 25.9%, which is quite high for a survey of this type. The results obtained were extremely positive, particularly for such a new scheme, and consistent with the data obtained by Fylde officers. Overall satisfaction with the curbside collection service was measured at 8%. An in-house Fylde customer satisfaction survey measuring customer satisfaction across a range of council service was carried out over a 3-month period in late 2012. The survey was distributed to a bank of 5,000 known resident email addresses and was also available to complete online. Once again, these results were consistent with the satisfaction levels obtained in the 2 different methods. Percentage satisfaction with household recycling service was recorded at 93%, exceeding the target of 78% and significantly better than the previous comparator of 68% measured in 2008-9. And the percentage satisfaction with the cleanliness of the streets in Fylde was recorded at 81%, exceeding the target of 75% and significantly better than the previous comparator of 65% measured in 2008-9. The results obtained from the in-house monitoring, the Ipsos Mori survey, and the corporate customer satisfaction survey all demonstrate consistency in improvement in overall customer satisfaction with the wheel bin recycling service. This confirms successful achievement of all the stated project outcomes. The results of the satisfaction survey have been included in the appendix at the end of the report. Similar assessments will be carried out in subsequent years where resources permit to provide an indication of ongoing service delivery and customer satisfaction with the collection service. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for extremely detailed report, and this is an excellent service and a real credit to Fylde Council. And I have some personal observations that I would like to get Councillor Fylde to Councillor Pounder to pursue in the future, obviously along with yourselves, and that is again to concentrate on the black bag collections to see if we can continue to reduce those, and concerns with regards to properties of multiple occupation and how we can actually go about those. I know personally from my own recycling and my grey bin, the amount of articles that I recycle, and certainly my brown bin and my blue bin misses every other alternative collection, and the grey bin is virtually empty and is developing the same pattern. So that would also lead me to say that I will perhaps be the norm amongst residents of the Fylde. So no doubt you'll be looking at rounds and seeing how they work between summer and winter. And in the winter time, your green bins won't be as full as in the summer, etc., etc. And to do with the grey bin collections as well, because people are recycling more. But extremely well done. It's an extremely good news story. I will also be interested to see how much money Fylde Council has saved through the reduction of the grey bin waste going to the landfill site, and that'll be an interesting figure that I'd like to see. But my colleagues are free to comment.
Yeah, like our leader, it's a very good report, and I congratulate the whole department on what they're doing. It is the way forward set out by government. But I have a few concerns about maybe special needs as I address it, a little bit more flexible. I would like to have seen a paragraph to address the exceptions you know, set out in the report. Not everybody, you know, has, you know, some people have restricted accesses and, you know, not for sufficient room for 4 bins, as you and I visited and not too many weeks ago. And I wouldn't like to be bullish in, you know, the way we go and try and, you know, to get them to accept 4 bins when they haven't room. And, you know, I would like to see, you know, maybe better negotiations to bring these type of residents with special needs, you know, more satisfaction into an acceptable situation. And I really would like to see that, because, you know, that I saw it a little bit bullish, the attitude of the department, and we did talk of it. So, you know, I have a problem with that, and I will say it tonight. That's how I feel. I would like to see something put in, maybe a paragraph to address these people with the exceptions.
That is appreciated and taken on board, and we are looking at the black sack areas and the areas where we can't service them with wheel bins to see what we can look at doing in the future.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Yeah, I thought, like everybody else here, it was a thorough and very informative report. And on a personal note, I would like to, it is commendable that this department is flexible to residents' needs I've found in my ward. So I'm hoping that is across filed. But it's to be commended, this report. Very thorough.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to just take up the issue about exceptions as well, because I noted from what you said that something needs to be addressed about the 7% that remain on the black bin and the sack and the box, because there's no plan to replace the vehicle. So what thoughts have you had already about what to do?
What we are currently doing, we are currently trialling a green sack scheme in some areas of the borough. As you know, residents with wheeled bins have a limited capacity for the amount of waste they are able to present on a fortnight. For properties on sacks, we do issue 2 black sacks per week, which is the equivalent of 4 sacks to a wheeled bin. However, many residents do tend to put out more than the 2 sacks, and the sacks are cleared because we can't leave them on the street. So we've been introducing this green sack scheme. It's been quite successful in Councillor Zacherle's ward, where we started with an education campaign explaining to residents what we're going to do, and we issue them with these 2 green sacks that are a unique colour. It's not something that you could purchase at a supermarket, and they are only entitled to put out the 2 green sacks on collection day. There are exceptions for larger families or people with special needs where they might require additional sacks. It's over a course of a number of months where we educate residents. If black sacks are found, they are searched for evidence of addresses where we could potentially write out to the residents, ask them if they need any additional assistance. We have provided the boxes and bags to these properties as well, and it has been very successful. So we're hoping that we'll be able to extend this ultimately across the full range of properties that will remain on sacks. The intention then, once we've limited the amount of waste that they will be able to put out, so we'll be collecting less residual waste from these properties, we are hoping that we will be able to compact the sack collections down to 3 days on the round. And then we still have the issue of the boxes and the sacks to collect from these properties. As part of the wagon replacement scheme that's been carried out, we had to make allowances for a spare twin pack vehicle in case one of the recycling vehicles went down. Now this vehicle is a spare vehicle, and there's potential capacity that on the remaining days of the week, the same crew that is currently collecting the sacks could then go out in this spare wagon and collect the boxes and the bags. Because it's a split wagon, they'll be able to collect the 2 streams of material separately. And that's the current plans, to hopefully be able to provide a better service in these areas.
Okay, thank you. So could we perhaps add to a recommendation that a further report comes, either to scrutiny or to Cabinet, but certainly that a further report comes with regard to the plan for the future rollout? And 7% of the borough is actually quite significant, isn't it? It's quite you know, a number of households that we need to look into. I'd like to add on to that as well, if I may, Chairman, as to we've fairly recently gone through a whole programme of replacing our vehicles. Obviously, those vehicles have a life to them, and I would like to know what the plan is for the future for their eventual replacement, because we have to prepare for that financially. So I don't know whether that's work that's ongoing now, or whether we can add that to further, you know, reports back.
It is work that has begun. I have provided some information which I believe will feed into the work that you'll be doing when you look at the capital schemes. We are also currently advertising for a new post, a fleet and depot manager position that would work and report to me, and one of the first jobs that they will have to do is to assess the entire fleet, to have a look at what the current replacement dates are, and to identify whether we want to replace with the same vehicles. Is there something new that's coming on the market, so that we can ensure that we've got continuity of service and planning for the future.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear that that's being looked into. Thank you.
Yes, but obviously fleet management and fleet replacement are extremely important, and the ways that we actually go about that, whether it's a purchase or a lease, or a purchase and lease back arrangement, but that's obviously detail for the officers. Councillor Fasackley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to support what Kathy's been saying about what's been happening in central wards and towns, and what a great improvement it's been. And I'd also just like to put on record that the number of times that I contact, particularly Stephen Howard, the response is brilliant. I mean, it's within a quarter of an hour. I do live quite near the depot, but it's very fast. They go the extra mile, and I know that they sometimes have to deal with some very unpleasant people and some very bad behaviour. And as far as I know,